Recording is going.
Okay, welcome everyone. We're now recording the meeting. I'll call the meeting to order at 10:04. Beth will be in charge of the minutes unless somebody wants to volunteer to take that on. You'll have access to the recording to facilitate the process if you would be so good to volunteer. Hearing none, Beth, I'm afraid that's still your duty.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. So as I mentioned before we started recording, we have 5 user council members attending. We need 6 to have a quorum, so we're not there quite yet. The agenda was sent out by email, a little draft agenda. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda anybody wants to suggest? Okay. How about the minutes? Any changes to the minutes? Corrections? Okay, if we had a quorum, I would say those 2 stand. They'll unofficially stand for now. All right. We'll go on with committee reports. I just had somebody attend. You want to get started with the committee reports?
I'd be glad to.
Cataloging.
Cataloging committee met February 7th. They discussed a new genre term for board books, the Lit F fixed fields. We also had more discussion on the audience fixed field. We had an update on the cataloging class, guidelines for Library of Things, and a brief demo of the Angular catalog. Circulation Committee met on March 8th. They're continuing to discuss revisions to the standard circulation policies. A draft was sent out last Tuesday, and the next meeting will be April 19th. And that's it.
Okay. I will share a link to the SAGE financial report in the chat. Oh, I'm having trouble finding the chat. Where'd it go? There it is. Okay. Beth, can you share?
Yes.
Have me share the screen.
Oh, yes. I've just made you the presenter.
Okay. All right, so this report was just created yesterday. And starting at the top, the membership dues are about what we've budgeted, although there's still, Christine reports about $9,000, $9,400 in accounts receivable to be received from unpaid membership dues and a little bit of Cat Express fee reimbursements. So ultimately that will be increased.
Yeah, reminders have been sent out, so I'll be continuing to follow up with those accounts receivable accounts.
The rest of the lines look good. Courier is about $10,000 from reaching its max we have budgeted. So that's one we need to keep an eye on. And then the other note is that she has here is just about paying John electronically. Cash balance is 199,000, about 200,000, about the same as last year. So we're in a good financial position. Any comments, questions about that? Okay, if none, we'll move on to John's cybersecurity policy update.
Okay,
And
did you get it last night?
I did see that come through. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at it. Beth, do you want to make John the presenter now?
John, do you want to be the presenter, or do you want me to bring it up on my computer? What would be more comfortable for you? Do you have it there?
Either is fine.
Okay,
I do, but it's fine.
I'll make you presenter so that you can go through the document under your control.
Okay. And I've got too many windows open. There it is. Do you see?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Do I need to zoom in or anything?
Yes.
Okay. Where did they move that to? Sorry.
Although we can zoom, we have a zoom control as well, so not a big deal.
Okay, it's just, I hate when they move the options.
What about control and your scroll wheel?
Yeah, we're gonna have to do that. Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. So I made a couple of small changes, like up at the top here, I changed it from customer to patron because, well, we're a library. It seemed to make more sense. Because the first document is largely related to our servers and Sage-owned equipment, I wanted to make sure that that was clear. So I added this little section at the top here to clarify that. If you have any questions, of course, we can discuss that. I don't know how long you want me to pause on that section for everybody to read it. Is that good? Let's see anybody. There we go. Are we good to move on, or do anybody have any questions about what I wrote there?
We're good.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, the chat was covering everybody, so I didn't see anybody's reaction there. So I added device here just because it's often referred to a network attached storage device or NAS device, just for clarification. And then down here, there was no hyphen, so I changed anti-spam. Here's where the most changes were done. We're under password management because we talked about this a lot last time and wanted to make sure that there was no confusion between this section and the acceptable use policy. So I moved, the reason it's all in strike through is because most of it I moved down there, like we talked about. So I also wanted to make sure that there's essentially two sections. There's a section for equipment that's owned by Sage, and then the Evergreen Evergreen logins, and in this particular case is referring to Sage Library Consortium members, to make sure that they are following their own acceptable use policy. As Brian mentioned, I added a line down here under acceptable use that if you have two acceptable use policies, we just want to make sure that you're following the more strict version, and if there's any conflicts on those policies. Does that part make? Oh, go ahead.
John, I just in reading this through again, all accounts of Sage Library System and those of Sage Library System member. I'm wondering if we should do staff.
Okay. Yes.
Staff members, or
yes, I think that needs to be added because otherwise it sounds like patrons.
Well, it could be interpreted to involve patrons as well, and so that's why I was wondering if we needed to clarify, and I didn't think of it till now. And there's lots of places where Sage Library System is referenced, and I wonder if we need the word "the" in front of it, just for readability. But it wasn't a big deal to me, so I didn't say anything earlier. But what does everybody else think?
We usually drop the from references to Baker County Library District.
Okay. We can leave it as is then.
Okay, perfect. Do you want to, are we good with this section then? Okay, I'm seeing some nods. Okay, so under patch management, Beth brought up that we have no real way of doing a periodic review, so we removed that section. I assume that's pretty straightforward. And then down here under the acceptable use policy, I added some language to clarify in regards to the ILS, and also to segment it so that it covers equipment owned by Sage Library System as well. I changed company to consortium because it seemed more appropriate, and I just added under scope. I added that it's kind of for those that don't already have their own acceptable use policy, that they can use this for guidance, just to try and clarify its purpose, so there's no confusion about it necessarily overriding a member. I just wanted to make sure it was clear that it needs to be followed, but that they need to have their own policy. So, are there any questions on this section? Okay, doesn't look like it.
Just in the scope, it looks like infrastructure needs a spell correction.
Oh, yes, thank you. Okay, so under general use, the password section, there's two sections. I wanted to make sure that the evergreen stuff was handled first. So this is all what we described last time, except Beth pointed out that we wanted to make sure it said staff instead of system, just to make sure that it was clear that we're referring to the evergreen accounts and them timing out at 60 minutes instead of 8 hours or whatever it's been, and that we're not referring to lock screens or anything like that. Let's see, we left in the part about educating users and using password management utilities. And then I added a section modified the section that was there to refer to equipment owned by Sage. Let's see. I think that's pretty straightforward. Are there any comments or questions? No? Okay. I think that was it, because I don't think there was anything else on the rest of the document. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'll fix the formatting I just wanted to leave in the changes so that it was easy to review. So I need to format it. Is there anything else that needs to be added or adjustments made or anything like that?
John, could you go to the section where it talks about compliance and signing and
You mean down at the bottom?
I think so. No, it's up above.
Let's see.
Yeah, this was all kind of general stuff.
Yeah.
I guess where I'm getting at is I was trying to remember the language of we talked about getting this to be signed by members when we redo the or go back for MOU signing. And I'm trying to remember whether there was any language in there about if they didn't sign, what the consequences were, or
I don't think there were.
okay, and that's fine because we're just expecting this to be signed along with the MOU. I guess I know there was some strong language up at the top. Talked about termination of employment and
right. Let's see, where was that?
It was at the very top. So compliance.
Yeah.
Disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment or business relationships. So I first hesitated about the employment, but then it's like, well, maybe they're talking about if like a Sage employee,
right.
you know,
that's how I read that.
Broke this, then their employment would be in question. And business relationships would have to do with the consortia versus the member. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of get a sense for, is everybody okay with this, or
I'm seeing lots of head nods, so
okay.
I assume that means yes.
Okay. So we should be good to go. Maybe this is what I was remembering and wanting to make sure that we were willing to back up any flagrant transgressions of this policy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that makes sense. So when I make all the changes, do you want me to email it to the council, or do you want me to email it on the listserv? Or do you want to, because it needs to be approved, but I don't know if you want to, I mean, we can't, can we do it now?
We still don't have a quorum.
Okay.
So I think through the listserv would be my suggestion.
Okay.
Is the council okay with this being voted on by email as well as the minutes and a potential draft budget? Are you thinking it needs more review before voting? Or what's your hesitation?
My hesitation, I hope it doesn't get voted down. What would we do in that case? I guess we'd then bring it back to the council for another vote.
And find out what changes they want.
I was only going to, the email vote is only going out to the council. So this would only be considered for vote by current council members.
Okay.
So that makes it less vulnerable because we've been the one discussing it. and then once it's voted on, it'll just be presented as a policy document to the rest of the members.
Is it possible to include a link maybe to the recording for those who aren't here to hear discussion along with the link to the vote? I just think
Sure.
there may be some that haven't been as, up to date, and it might be helpful.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So include the recording link in the email vote, so they get a chance to hear the discussion and review what we reviewed. Okay. It was just a procedural thing. When I send out the email vote, I wanted to know what we were including. Okay. Thanks, John.
Oh, no problem. You want me to go ahead and end sharing?
I can make Perry presenter again, maybe, or maybe you have to make him presenter.
That's what I was trying to.
Oh,
I'm not used to this interface.
no, I can.
Okay.
Perry's not presenter again.
Okay.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the Sage Evergreen upgrade update.
Yep. So the test server is up and it's functional. Let me.
I'm going
put
to
the link
be
in.
sending out a link to that, along with login information. I did some playing around with it. Seems to be fine. It has our data in it, so you're going to see at least a fairly complete copy of what you own, as well as your logins will work, that kind of thing. I'm also going to be sending out a doodle poll for trainings starting next week and maybe the first week of April, just to kind of go over new features, as well as encouraging folks to get in and take a look. One of the things that they did do when they set up our test servers, they did not change it over to the new OPAC version. So that's probably a setting that we will employ on the production upgrade as well, not to change out those OPAC pages quite yet.
Yeah. So the only real concern I have about the test server is because it does look like what everybody's used to. I want to make sure that nobody starts accidentally cataloging or doing circulation in it, thinking that they're actually doing regular work. So I just want to make sure that everybody is aware when they're in it, that they're in it and not in the live production version.
With that, John, I might make a change to the test OPAC to kind of change the heading or something.
Right, to differentiate.
To differentiate it, because you're right, it does look very similar to the current system. So I'll make a note of that and work on changing that. As far as the upgrade date, John has been communicating with Equinox, and they're ready to go when we're ready to go.
Yep.
Basically was the word that we got. So I wanted to talk with the council about what they thought was, do we upgrade the second week of April? Do we need more time? There's not a lot of, I guess I'm just thinking that there's not a lot of differences that are going to impact folks. It's just more of a heads up. This page looks a little different, but the functionality is still the same. But I wanted to just establish your comfort zone and what you feel a practical upgrade date would be.
Hey, this is Maggie in the Dalles. So
Yeah.
we are going to be meeting, about a third of our front desk staff the first 2 weeks of April. So if we could put it back, definitely after the middle of April or further back, that would work for us.
Okay. So maybe like the third week of April.
I think that would work easier for our library.
Okay.
What did you say was happening to your staff, Maggie?
Well, we have 3 of us that are going to be on vacation or out on sick leave. So
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
it's just, unfortunately, we all picked the same time of the year to do this. So anyway, but by the middle of April on, going into the rest of the year, we will all be here.
Will that give enough time for libraries to be able to absorb some of the training? That's only a month, and we've got spring break in the middle of that as well. PLA is also occurring during that time. Some people may be out for that. I'm just wondering.
Okay. The fourth week of
Well, that's
April,
this month in March.
a PLA.
Right, but if we're doing training for people to be able to absorb and whatnot, I don't want to
gotcha.
short side people is what I'm suggesting.
My assumption would be is that the trainings that we'll do will be recorded so folks can tune into them at a later point if they aren't able to attend the live ones. But we can certainly push this to the last week of April, and that would give it more than
I'm just asking. I don't know what other people feel. I just don't want people to feel like they don't have enough time to prepare. That's the only concern.
Yeah. Okay. What do the others feel? Third week of April, fourth week of April?
Either works good for us, I think.
Okay. Hearing from Mary that either one works. Well, why don't we I'm trying to decide whether I send out an email to the listserv and question folks on the third week of April. Typically, Equinox does these in the middle of the week, Wednesday, Thursday. The system will be down for the day, so we're going to have to talk about offline circulation.
I think it's good to send out a notice. We're scheduling this for the third week in April. If anybody has an objection to that time, let us know if you'd like it to be moved.
Yeah, okay. I will do
And
that.
we kind of get a survey of people. I think that's a good idea.
Okay. All right. Okay, and I can do that in the same email that I'm sending out, the doodle poll for the trainings as well. And we'll invite feedback. Okay. So anyway, it's exciting to finally have a test server up and be able to play with it and show some of the new features. So I'm really excited about that, and it's going to be great going forward having that test server.
We haven't had as many outages issues. I don't know if that's due to the upgrade work that John did on his visit, or if we've had less attacks.
Well, so we put in place some like logging and some other changes to the servers. to kind of mitigate some of that of what was happening, and it seems to be working. So we've got some tools now that we didn't have before available to us to do that, and I can work with EOU if it starts to crop up again. So
Great.
Thanks, John, for all your work on this.
Yes.
no problem. Thank you.
All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda, the budget review. Let me get that screen up. Okay. We'll start with the official budget document and then go to the fee schedule. Hopefully you can see this on your screen. In the center column are the labels, category labels. To the left of that are the previous year data, and to the right is the proposed budget. So we are proposing our cash carryover to be about the same, 175,000. That includes the operations reserve and the contingency reserves that we need. Membership dues are increased to 245,000. That is what we need to cover all of our operations costs, less the amount that we get reimbursed in grants and fees for Cat Express services and things like that. So the amount that we are requesting from the state library this next year will be increased from 61,000 to 64,700, based on anticipated increase due to fuel costs. And, you know, really that might be a little bit low, but that's the amount that grant has been submitted, so that's what we have.
So I did project some increases for fuel. Also, I found out from Orbis Cascade that they were anticipating a 4% increase for all the Orbis Cascade sites.
Okay.
So that was what was
Great.
used to come up with that.
And, you know, those unanticipated increases are why we need to keep contingency reserve. So if it is more, we do have money for that. Miscellaneous revenue, this is primarily the reimbursements for Cat Express. You can see the history over here on the left. It's ranged from less than $1,000 to $3,500. And I think so far this year, usage has been a little bit lower. So that should be, we're keeping the budget amount the same, kind of at the high range of where it has been in historically. So total resources, 488,000. Personnel, proposing a 7% increase to system administrator salary, just to keep up with the cost of living, because inflation rate is actually at 8.1% now, I think, for the Western region, and is not expected to decrease even if they do make big adjustments to try to control that through Federal Reserve manipulation of the interest rates. Getting that up to 80,000 has been a goal. 80,000 was kind of a quote that we had from our former tech support staff. It said that's competitive, fairly competitive range, but that was from like 5 years ago that we got that quote. And Beth has announced that she is looking at next June 2023 as her retirement. So we need to be prepared, position ourselves to be recruiting somebody to replace Beth. And, with the number of libraries that are dependent on our system, we've got to have somebody with good skills. I think Beth probably does the work of multiple people, between the courier management and the systems administration. So I also want to comment that I think, Beth's sacrificed working for a lower pay rate, as is John. It's what we're able to afford. So we need to correct that if we can. So that 7% is applied not only to Beth's salary, but all library district for Baker's staff. That includes our administrative assistant, accountant. So that goes up to $69.55. And down below in materials and services, looking at John's, that line is down here on line number 38. So that 7% is there too. PERS calculations. We add a formula, so that's what it comes out to, 22,700. Social Security. There's no health insurance since Beth is retired and rehired and is covering that on her own. So 117,000 personnel. That's an increase from last year budget of 110,500. On materials and services, everything's pretty much the same except for the contract for John, as I mentioned, and then courier, which is increased to 105,000 from what we have budgeted this year of 96. Capital outlay expense line is kept the same. Okay, so all of our servers catastrophically died. Gives us some funds to replace that, and the reserved for future expenditure, also they called the operation contingency, is at 21,000, just so that we can even out. We have to have this total requirements match our total resources. So that's that. Any questions about the budget? Comments? Okay.
Thanks, Perry, for preparing it and explaining it so well.
Oh, thank you. We're going to jump over to Sage fees. I've updated the service populations for the public libraries and all of the schools and academic libraries. And we average out the populations over 3 years. So this column here, E, is what we had last year. This column is the updated one with new data. And this column G is the ratio of that member's library in proportion to the whole service population of Sage. So that's the last year's ratio. This is this year's ratio. And this is the change of those ratios. Okay, that'll be important here when we talk about the variable fee rate. Here's some historical information about how much libraries have paid over the last 4 years. And going all the way to the right, we have the proposed fee rate. So we're going to stick with the variable rate strategy, as we discussed last meeting. And to get to that 250,000 that we need to cover Sage operation expenses, we come up with this percentage. So to get there, 10.8 is the amount of the flat rate that we need to apply to all members. So that 10.8% is then adjusted by the ratio change here from column I. So for example, let's take one that kind of makes sense. We'll look at the DALs here. The DALs ratio has gone up 2% based on increases in their population. So their ratio is not just 10.8. It's we add that 2.1% to the 10.8, so they get to 13.1. So their amount will be 15,000. Their fee will be 15,620 versus 13.8 last year. That's an increase of $1,800. And everybody has that same calculation. The color coding here, the green is the lowest and the reds are the highest. And I looked through them, they all pretty much make sense. The largest decreases that we're seeing are in the schools, particularly the academic enrollment numbers have really dropped. So some of these, like the BMCC, you see here, they've got a reduction in their member fee of $343. And also Columbia Gorge, a reduction of $375. So that's getting us advancing towards a more logical and fair strategy from billing members. I think we're still quite a ways off, though, because as you can tell by, if we look at just cost per capita, we've got some fees as high as $14 and some that are, like 50 cents. The lowest cost per capita rates seem to be the larger members. I'm going to switch over so that I have this one sorted by that cost per capita, you can see. So the highest rates are all schools, predominantly schools. Down here in the green, all of our members that are 15,000 and up, plus a few of our members that are over 2,000 and 4,000. The middle range ones are about in the middle. So ultimately, I think our target cost per capita is about $1, somewhere in $1.50 range is where we would want to be. So for that reason, that's why if you read my email about a strategy to get more money if we needed to with this kind of special assessment, using the kind of model that condo associations use, say if they need a new roof or have to have an emergency building project, maintenance project for their condo members, they assess a special fee. So say if we next year had trouble recruiting a replacement for Beth and needed to get more money, I think it would make sense to approach our largest members and assess a certain amount, maybe variable according to their different populations, but somewhere between 2,000 and 5,000 to try to correct these cost per capita imbalances, and that should get us enough.
But Perry,
to be competitive.
This special fee would be an increase to their annual amount, right? It wouldn't be just a one-time and done. It would be this is what we're doing to move you guys up to where we think you should be cost-wise.
Right. So that's just a strategy to keep in the pocket to think about if we needed to. Just thinking ahead. Hopefully we won't have to do that. But at some point, I think we still need some more aggressive correction of this disparity, because some members are getting a good deal and some are not. And I was talking with Beth as well. I think maybe I'll reach out to some ILS providers and just to kind of get a quote, because I think it would be helpful to have an idea of what it would cost, say, Baker County Library District to be independent instead of being with a consortium. What is the market rate of the services that we're getting? Not even counting the resource sharing career benefits. And if any other members want to do that, all that information would be helpful as well. Can I answer any questions about the fee schedule? Okay. So Beth will send that out for voting by the user council electronically.
Yeah, and I'll encourage folks to listen to the recording before they vote so that they have an understanding of what they're voting on.
I'm surprised that we don't have more members attending the meeting after I announced the flat rate was going to be 10.8%.
Perry, did you want to send me the link to the latest and greatest version of that so that I have it when I send out the email?
Yeah, this is on the Sage Google Drive, but let me just put the link in the chat.
Okay.
Fee schedule. Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Sage website.
So I actually wanted to apologize for that when we were down. The issue, why is that not displaying correctly?
There's problems today, John.
Let me try a different browser.
I didn't get a
Sometimes
chance to tell you that I started seeing problems with our website again, but
No, they're better. Okay.
I didn't make any changes, but
Neither did I.
so it was a curiosity because I'm not seeing menus that I normally see. And so anyway,
Okay.
long and short of it, our Drupal site, we either have to move to version 8 or 9, we're on version 7, or we need to move to another platform. In doing research, we found out that Drupal, there's been a lot of dissatisfaction or angst with moving between version 7 and 9. Plus, I've gotten feedback that folks would like something that's a lot more user-friendly as far as updating, so that John and I aren't the only ones who can add things to the website or participate with the functionality of the website. So we are going to convert our current content on the Drupal website to WordPress. We've gone ahead and downloaded the WordPress software, have started looking at some ways to configure it. And so that'll be a project that we'll be working on. And if it continues to have problems like this, it's going to be a faster conversion. Just letting you know that that stuff is in the works. And I thought we were going to be okay to kind of move this out gradually, but with the changes I noticed today, it's like, okay, what happened? I thought we were fine, but John and I will look at that and we'll see if we can't figure out what's going on with this latest round of changes. But that's what we're going to work on, and we'd like feedback from folks, and so we'll be sending out emails kind of asking for what functionality you would like to see on the Sage Lib website that's maybe not there currently, or that you want to make sure that we include in the rewrite. WordPress has is commonly used for web platforms, and so there's a lot of add-ons that are already out there. So anyway, just look forward to feedback from folks, and as we start bringing pages up, obviously we'll publish those and get some feedback on that as well. Any questions?
I have questions, but it's mainly just what happened because it was working.
I know. I agree, John. We'll take a look and see what we can figure out. Maybe some update happened automatically.
Well, it is set to do minor updates, and so I need that's probably it. Let me check.
So we can check and see what it did in our absence, and we've got backups. We could always undo things, but we want a functional website for folks to look up stuff.
Yeah.
So that
I was going to apologize that, all the documentation I checked didn't have anything about how PHP was required.
Yeah.
Excuse me, to be updated. And when I updated the PHP for the one site, it broke the other side. And so I had to downgrade it, which then broke the other part. And we finally found a version that worked in the middle, but it was, I apologize for that. I didn't expect any of that to happen because it wasn't in any of the documentation I could find before or after. So, but going to WordPress, I think, will be a better solution for us because it looks like we also will be able to incorporate more of what everybody's been asking for, as well as the functionality that we already have, rather than having multiple things floating around that have to be updated separately. So.
Yeah. And WordPress does have a module for ticketing, help ticket system. So we'll be able to incorporate that as well. So back into development, but we'll get there.
All right. I just wanted to return to the minutes from last time a little bit on a couple of action items that I noticed. Checking with schools about the checkout limits. Does that still need to be done?
It does, Perry. Yeah.
Okay. And announcing a change of the place hold button to request.
Yeah, I was waiting on that because of the imminent change to the upgrade, basically. Because if I do it now, I'm just going to have to redo it in the new. So my preference was to make this nomenclature change in the upgrade. Is that okay with
That sounds good.
folks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't we just bundle that notification that along with this upgrade, that term is going to change on the
Okay.
on the labels.
Okay. There's also in the last meeting, we talked about a document that you presented, Perry, that had to do with meeting policy. I needed you to send me that document so I could put it up on the website.
Assume that means we're done with the meeting?
Well, I guess I was trying to figure that out too, Dia.